Alright, so this is part 2 of my quest to explore all of my vanilla Valheim seed for the first time. There's a part 1 you can go watch now that is a more so overview of what I'm doing and just an introduction to Valheim. So if you don't know anything about Valheim or you just want to chronologically keep up, I suggest go watching that video first. To recap, Valheim is one of my favorite games, but I always hit a wall with it. There's roughly the same part of the progression in biomes and crafting that I stop at, and this is me documenting my first time getting past that point and seeing all of what the game has to offer in its vanilla form without looking anything up. At the end of part 1, I established some goals for myself. Those goals were explore the mountain region by my main base, find a swamp biome, defeat the elder boss, establish a farm system, and beef up my base. Did I do all those things? Well, this is what part 2 is all about, starting with beefing up my base because that is what I did first. I have multiple satellite bases, but a main base close to the spawn point of my world seed. The intermittent raids from enemies was my biggest concern at this point. I got so distracted with other stuff that prior to this I had not finished my base's defenses. I had started a moat but needed to finish my rock wall. I did that and then I got started on a secondary wooden fence wall on the inside. I then had to expand my house to make more room for chests and to be able to upgrade my crafting stations. I won't bore you with all the wood chopping this took, but I ended up expanding the house in a more organized way and converting my second story into a little bedroom situation where I can put all my stacks of coins and trophies. With one thing done, I moved on to the next immediate mission, farming. This part I will admit I fell short on. I got pretty distracted with everything else. I planted some carrots and trees all around my base for easy access to wood. I will say once all of these trees grew, it created a very different vibe to my base that I really liked and provided more obstacles for enemies to get through during raids. With all of my added defenses and surrounding obstacles, I finally left my base's perimeter for the first time in a while and honestly was so happy to see a grayling. I thought it was hilarious and made me realize how lonely the game was feeling while not constantly being approached by the pesky locals. Feeling content with my base, I focused for a bit on mead production. Running low on crops, I ventured out into the unseen Black Forest to clear some dungeons for Serling cores and hoping I would find carrot seeds along the way. Just as I hit a coastline of the island, I found a troll cave. I cleared it, taking these trolls' hoarded loot, and rested on the outside. As I healed and pondered into the flames, wicked trees in the background caught my eye. I looked more to realize the green smog of the swamp was just beyond where I sat. I had found a swamp biome finally, and almost completely by accident. Although I had set my eyes on the prize, the sun was setting and getting caught this far from my base during the night was not a good move. I quickly threw up a tiny cabin with the back facing the troll cave. I did so that if I got raided that night I could run into the cave and wait it out. Morning came and I couldn't help myself. I had to at least get a taste of the swamp. I geared up and headed to the close border of the Black Forest and the swamp. I immediately encountered turf wars between Grey Dwarfs and Draugrs. Yes, the Draugr. How I forgot about my old foe. Not the brightest of the Valheim enemy roster, but they pack a punch if you let them. And I ended up doing. I was quickly reminded of the difficulty jump of the swamp. I had to return for my things, and as I did, I cautiously dipped my toes further into the swamp biome and encountered some leeches. After killing the leech, I picked up a blood bag and was reminded by my recipes that that was what I needed to make the mead that allowed me to withstand the cold. With this development, I went back to my nearest base and I loaded up my person with my most valuable finds and made my trek back home to my home base. Being that the swamp was just far away enough to make a long run and knowing that I would eventually need to branch out, I decided to take some time to start mead production, focusing on frost resistance to explore the near mountain biome, and getting the supplies to build the next size up ship for easier sailing. While my meat fermented, I thought it was a good time to gear up and take on the Elder. I sort of forgot that I had been looking for enough ancient seeds to sacrifice to summon the boss, and now I had them. I made my way through the thicket of black forest to the summoning fire and dropped the seeds in. As a massive elder emerged, I had flashbacks to my other times fighting this boss. It is the furthest I've gotten in the biome bosses in my Valheim experience, and knew his tricks. My plan was to keep a good distance and line him up with fire arrows. Eventually, I did get stuck, and he got the best of me. Fortunately, I had slept on my close mining base to establish a closer spawn, and ran back, grabbing my things and continuing the fight. It did take a while, as I would just shoot some arrows, he would bring up roots, and shoot these gnarly things at me, and rinse and repeat. Eventually, he did get stuck for some reason, which I of course am not above taking advantage of. Looting him after he perished, I found the swamp key, which I had completely forgotten that I couldn't even get into the swamp dungeons without it. It's a good thing I decided to fight the Elder before I ventured further into the swamp and got confused why I couldn't get into the crypts. Now back at my base with my swamp key and supplies to craft a larger boat, I decided that my swamp base would be the base I sail out of to explore more of the world, so I crafted my boat, grabbed what I needed, and sailed off. I should mention part of what I was doing was building a portal at the swamp base to connect to my portal at my home base. Sailing under the night sky was beautiful, and a good read of what was on the coastline on the other side of my spawn island. Seeing the backside of the mountain range, I took notes of how far it expanded out and what I had to explore. Eventually making it back to my now swamp base, I built a portal so I can now travel between my home and swamp base easily. I crafted some healing potions and other resources, gearing up for the difficult swamp biome. I slept for the night in my swamp base and headed there first thing in the morning. Rain came down hard in the black forest, blocking the morning sun. As I crossed the biome border, the rain dissipated, but the thick green smog grew. Everything looked like it smelled bad, and I began my search for a dungeon as I battled leeches, draugrs, and abominations. Eventually, I would find a sunken crypt. Entering in stealth mode thanks to the key that my defeated foe, the Elder, dropped, I was cautious. I then came face to face with a muddy scrap pile and remembered what the swamp supplied warriors of Valheim with. When breaking through these muddy scrap piles and swamp dungeons to get into new rooms, they dropped things like leather scraps, withered bones, and most importantly, scrap iron. This is what I needed to make iron for crafting. I ventured in as far as my carrying capacity would let me and headed back to base. Now back at base, I realized I had a dilemma. You can't take any ingot or ore materials through portals, and all of my smelting stuff was at my home base. I had a lot to consider with almost 2 full stacks of scrap iron on my person. What I came up with was I would mine as much tin that was near and sail back to my home base with all of the iron and tin I found. There are a few reasons for this. With so much iron already found, it would take up too much time to get back and forth between my swamp base and my home base. Mind you, they are on the same island, so I could technically run, but I would have to be worried about being over encumbered every time, and both running and sailing would take up a lot of time. So I came up with a long-term plan to convert my measly swamp base into a smelting and forging hub, while continuing to treat my home base as a cooking and farming base. I still had a lot of copper at that base, so I thought it would make sense to mine the tin and sail back, doing one big smelting and forging run to use up all the resources at my home base before I broke stuff down and brought it to the swamp base. In addition to this logic, I was also worried about a raid at my swamp base in its current state. I barely had a fence up at the time, so I would quickly lose everything if I built a forge there. So I sailed back with iron and tin in my ship's inventory and was met with a thick fog in the early morning. It made navigating difficult, but I eventually made it back in one piece. I began smelting iron to unlock all of its recipes and decided what I would be crafting before moving my forging equipment. While at my home base, I remembered that I now had frost resistance potion and thought it was a good time to explore the mountains near me. I knew it wasn't the largest, but thought that there had to be a mountain dungeon somewhere. I ran all over the close range, battling some skeletons and wolves. I had my ear to the ground as I knew the sound of a drake would tell me if I was close. I ran and jumped, peak to peak, finding nothing. I looked all over, and I was met with disappointment after disappointment. I was near the end of the range and could see the black forest. Night was coming, so I thought I would just head back to my base. Just as I was ready to give up, I heard it. I heard the roar I was looking for. I quickly darted in the direction and saw two of the little ice dragons. I made quick work of them with my bow and sought out for what they were protecting. It turns out it wasn't a dungeon, but a nest. I was rewarded with this egg, which is cool, but I did leave a little bummed not to find a dungeon. Now knowing that my closest mountain range was a bust, I pondered what to do. I now had a swamp base and needed to build that out, but sometimes in games like this, I have a strong urge to do specific things. At times, I just want to cut down trees and build for hours. Other times, I want to explore and fight. I heard the call to sail and see what some of my neighboring world had to offer, so I decided I would do just that. I gathered what I thought I would need: some food, some healing, my best armor and weapons, and sailed off. It felt good, and I was glad to have listened to that urge. Out in the ocean, I thought about how genius of a design this game has. Obviously, a lot of other games have done similar things prior, but the entire Norse Viking design makes so much sense. You start small at your little home and you expand. You sail off out of curiosity and the quest for more and establish connections and bases elsewhere. You come back with your riches and you continue to expand your base. I continued sailing, making my way through precarious points, making note of a close mountain region. I also knew that plains was a region I had encountered closer to spawn before. It looks like the meadows with a more tan and open tone to it. I followed the coastline up and up, but after seeing more meadows and black forests, I decided it was time to return. However, on my way back, a new coastline caught my eye. It had a pretty large stone structure on it and more tan tone to it. I had a feeling it had to be the plain, so I rolled up to the coast immediately. I was quickly met by hostile locals, the Fulings. I had not experienced these enemies before. They were very aggressive and I had to be strategic about battling them. They did a lot of damage to me, but were also agile. I took their health down little by little, taking them out one by one. Eventually, there was only one left. I found this rock to get the upper hand, but all of a sudden, this giant bug came up and one-shot it. I was dead, very far away from my base with my ship on a foreign shore.